There are those who claim America's true founding was in the year 1619, when African slaves were forced across the Middle Passage to come to the New World. They claim that America is rooted in oppression and racism. These are the claims of the 1619 Project. But the true founding of America happened in 1776, when a group of rebels fought for independence from the British and built America with one idea in mind: freedom for all. Our founding fathers saw the future, a world without slavery. But America did not start out this way, as some were not free. Sadly for America, some refused to embrace the idea of freedom for all. They thwarted laws prohibiting the importation of slaves, laws intended to end slavery in America once and for all, and would have certainly preserved the barbaric institution of slavery forever. A civil war was declared. Over 300,000 white men fought alongside 36,000 of their black brothers, and all made the ultimate sacrifice, giving their lives to end slavery. Proponents of the 1619 Project refused to acknowledge this history. After the Civil War, America remained a divided nation, flawed, but now free to all. Reconstruction laid the framework for what many blacks might have considered an unimaginable future, and it began with over 15,000 blacks being elected to office. By the turn of the 20th century, America began to experience an awakening as black culture was sewn in the fabric of the nation. The lines began to blur between black and white. Black culture slowly infused with American culture. Still, the struggle continued. Hate groups like the KKK continued oppressing blacks. Laws were passed to prevent blacks from gaining the true American dream. Undaunted, America marched steadfastly toward its great vision, a vision enshrined in the nation's Constitution.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
The dream, mentioned by Reverend King, would eventually be embraced by all. The entire country lauded sports legends like Jesse Owens and Joe Louis to destroy the idea of Hitler's white nationalism. Many other blacks destroyed racist and bigoted stereotypes as black engineers, scientists, doctors, judges, scholars, authors, playwrights, poets, and entertainers became mainstream to the American culture. Why would anyone want to destroy such a legacy? A legacy of overcoming adversity to form one nation under God, one unhyphenated America.
I saw today, unbelievably, in my view, Ted Cruz, Kayleigh McEnany, Ronna McDaniel, Melania Trump, quoting Dr. King, tweeting Dr. King. Those were the same people that were like Melania Trump with this birther lie, Ted Cruz with challenging, the Electoral College, Kayleigh McEnany. Just over and over again with her propaganda. How dare they try to quote Dr. King on the celebration of his birthday when they enabled a racist president.
Okay, so this is my favorite part, is that MLK Day was supposed to be a unifying moment around which all Americans could unify. And it would be good if all of your political opponents cited MLK approvingly. But if your political opponents cite MLK approvingly and they're your political opponents and you're on the left, that's very bad. Then you're not allowed to talk about MLK ever again. So anyway, CNN has now come out against what is called the 1776 report. Okay, so the president had an advisory committee. They put together the 1776 report, which was designed to be a counter to the 1619 Project. And it is a fulsome explanation of the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. It talks about the greatness of the United States. It says things like this. Of course, neither America nor any other nation has perfectly lived up to the universal truths of equality, liberty, justice, and government by consent. No nation before America ever dared state those truths as the formal basis for its politics. None has strived harder or done more to achieve them. Right? That is the basis of the 1776 Commission. And it's a report well worth reading with your kids. It talks about the value of the Declaration of Independence and the value of the Constitution of the United States. It quotes people ranging from Thomas Jefferson to Frederick Douglass. It talks about race in the Constitution. It quotes Ronald Reagan, of course. And the basic idea is that there are a bunch of challenges to American principles that are now rife on the left. And this, of course, is exactly right. It talks about the evils of progressivism, which held that essentially the Declaration of Independence was irrelevant, and the evils of fascism, the evils of communism. And then it talks about racism and identity politics and points out that the civil rights movement was a grand and glorious movement culminating in the 1960s with the passage of 3 major legislative reforms affecting segregation, voting, and housing rights. It presented itself and was understood by the American people as consistent with the principles of the founding. And Martin Luther King Jr. himself said, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. And then, says the report, the civil rights movement was almost immediately turned to programs that ran counter to the lofty ideals of the founders. The ideas that drove this change had been growing in America for decades. They distorted many ideas of areas of policy in the half-century that followed. Among the distortions was the abandonment of non-discrimination and equal opportunity in favor of group rights, not unlike those advanced by John C. Calhoun and his followers. Right? I mean, I've written about all of this. I've talked about it on the show. There's nothing racist about this report. CNN's headline is, quote, Trump administration issues a racist school curriculum report on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So you are now in direct opposition to Martin Luther King Jr. if you believe that America was gloriously founded, did not live up to its ideals, and progressively realized those ideals over time, and that identity politics strips away those ideals. Okay, we're going to purge our public schools of these sorts of ideas. We're going to cram down on American citizens ideas they do not agree with. We will use our institutional power outside government in order to do that. We will use the institutions of the media, of Hollywood, of social media. You'll see it in every area of your culture. You'll see it in your kids' schooling. Right? This is what the left-wing authoritarians would like. Okay, and then they would like to do it using government itself. And then they would like to formalize this arrangement. They would like to use the powers of the executive